Imagine it is Friday night. The parking lot is full. Every good seat is gone. There is a line for popcorn, another line for drinks, and people are still arriving for the next showing. If you owned this place, you would probably look around and think the same thing everyone else does. This has to be a great night for business, and it probably is. But here's the strange part. The movie everyone came to see might be one of the least profitable things being sold inside the building. That is the first thing you have to understand about owning a cinema. The product on the giant screen is not necessarily where the money is. A theater can sell thousands of tickets, fill multiple auditoriums, and still have surprisingly little left from the box office once everyone else takes their share. So the interesting question is not how many tickets a cinema can sell. It is what business you are actually buying when you buy a movie theater. Because once you follow one customer from the moment she buys a ticket to the moment she walks back into the parking lot, the answer changes several times. First, it looks like entertainment. Then it starts looking like food. Then hospitality. And by the end, it looks like something else entirely. So let us begin with the ticket, because that is where the illusion starts. If you own a restaurant, you control the menu. If you own a clothing store, you choose the inventory. If you own a cinema, the main product people are paying to experience belongs to somebody else. The theater does not own the film. It licenses the right to show it. That means the money a customer pays at the box office is not theater revenue in the way most people imagine. For many releases, the distributor can take roughly half of the ticket price. For a major blockbuster during its strongest opening period, the studio share can climb higher. So a $12 ticket can leave the theater with less than half of what the customer paid. And the irony gets worse. The films that create the biggest crowds can also come with the toughest terms, because the studio knows the cinema needs that movie more than the movie needs any individual cinema. Some licensing agreements can also keep a major release on valuable screens for a minimum run, even if attendance falls after opening weekend. Think about what that means. You paid for the building. You paid for the projector. You paid for the sound system, the staff, the electricity, and the seats. Another company supplies the film and still takes a large piece of the ticket revenue. At this point, the cinema business looks terrible until the customer walks a few meters farther into the lobby. Now she reaches the concession stand. This is where the economics flip. Popcorn is corn, oil, seasoning, packaging, and labor. Fountain drinks are syrup, carbonated water, ice, a cup, and a lid. The raw cost can be tiny compared with the selling price. More importantly, the studio does not take a film rental percentage from your popcorn. That money belongs to the theater. This is why the concession stand is not some side business attached to the cinema. It is part of the core financial engine. The movie creates traffic. Traffic creates concession sales. And concession sales help pay for the building. The lobby is designed around that logic. You walk past illuminated menus. You smell popcorn before you enter the auditorium. Combo pricing encourages a larger transaction. The business watches a simple question very closely. How much food and beverage revenue does each visitor generate? A sold seat is useful. A sold seat carrying popcorn and a drink into the auditorium is much more useful. And once you understand that, another decision that looks completely irrational starts making sense. Some cinemas deliberately remove seats. Suppose an auditorium holds 200 traditional seats. Replace them with large motorized recliners, and maybe only 80 people fit. You have removed more than half the capacity of the room. In most capacity businesses, that sounds insane. Fewer units usually means less potential revenue. But cinemas discovered that capacity is not the only number that matters. Occupancy matters. Price per customer matters. Concession spending matters. A traditional seat might sell for around $12. A premium recliner can justify a higher price. More importantly, customers may choose the upgraded cinema more often. A room with 200 seats operating at 30% occupancy has 60 customers. An 80-seat room at 80% occupancy has 64. The smaller room can serve more paying customers in practice. Charge each one more, and often create a stronger premium experience around food and drinks. This is the first major lesson I would take seriously as an owner. You are not trying to maximize seats. You are trying to maximize profitable customers per showing. But there is a problem hidden inside that sentence. Friday night is the easiest moment to make the numbers work. A cinema does not live only on Friday night. If I had to explain the danger of this entire business in 2 words, I would call it the Tuesday problem. Friday night lies to you. Saturday lies to you too. The lobby is busy. Popcorn is moving. Premium seats are full. Then Tuesday afternoon arrives. 20 people sit in an auditorium built for 100. Another room has 12. The concession stand is almost silent. And nearly everything that makes the cinema expensive is still there. Rent does not care that the room is empty. The projector still runs. Lighting still runs. Ventilation still runs. Staff still have to clean the auditorium and serve the customers who did arrive. Insurance does not become cheaper because nobody wanted the 3:00 showing. A cinema has an unusual combination of volatile demand and stubborn fixed costs. That is why the real calculation is not whether one screening makes money. The calculation is whether the strong nights generate enough surplus to carry the weak ones. A packed July weekend may be subsidizing an almost empty Tuesday in January. Once you see the business this way, peak attendance becomes less impressive. The question is not how busy the building gets at its best. The question is how much cash it burns at its worst. And this is where the physical building itself becomes the financial problem. People imagine owning a cinema and think about movies, screens, seats, and popcorn. I would worry about something much less glamorous. The lease. A cinema occupies an enormous amount of physical space, and much of that space is expensive. Whether the auditorium contains 100 people or 12. The landlord does not cut the rent because Tuesday was quiet. There is a real case that shows how rigid those obligations can become. In September of 2022, Cineworld, the parent company of Regal, and several related entities filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. One of Regal's landlords reported that Regal leased 57 theaters from it at the time. After restructuring, a new master lease covered 41 of those properties. Rent alone did not cause Cineworld's bankruptcy. The company was dealing with debt. The pandemic shock disrupted attendance and a damaged theatrical market. But the episode reveals the part I would care about as an owner. Revenue can disappear quickly. A lease cannot. Add projection systems, broken seats, bathrooms, kitchens, insurance, maintenance, and heating and cooling. And the building becomes a machine that keeps sending bills. That means the dangerous number is not what the cinema earns on its best Saturday. It is how much of the building you are still paying for when almost nobody comes. Now imagine you built the theater correctly. Great location, good seats, efficient staffing, strong concession sales. You can still have a bad year because of decisions made by companies you do not control. A cinema does not decide when Hollywood releases its strongest films. It does not decide whether the summer slate is excellent or disappointing. It does not control production delays, labor disputes, failed blockbusters, or the decision to move a film toward home viewing. This creates a dependency that most businesses would hate. Your building is fixed. Your payroll is real. Your rent arrives every month. But demand can depend on whether somebody else produced enough movies people actually want to leave home to see. Cinema revenue is also seasonal. Summer and the holiday period traditionally carry some of the strongest releases. January and February can be much weaker. That makes cash flow uneven by design. A strong December may be funding a weak February. And when several major films underperform at the same time, local management cannot simply invent another blockbuster. This is the second structural lesson of cinema ownership. You control the experience. You do not fully control the reason people came. And over the last several years, that reason has become harder to protect because the industry changed one of its oldest rules. For decades, theaters had a powerful advantage. If a major film opened today and you wanted to see it immediately, the cinema was essentially the only place to go. The traditional theatrical window could keep films away from home viewing for roughly 3 months. That created urgency. See it now or wait. The pandemic broke that habit. With cinemas closed, studios experimented with direct-to-streaming releases, premium home rentals, and much shorter windows. Some films were allowed to move toward home rental after only a few weeks. That changed the customer's calculation. A casual moviegoer now asks a question that barely existed before. Do I want to pay for parking, tickets, popcorn, and drinks tonight, or wait and watch this at home? That does not mean streaming replaces cinema. The experiences are different, but it means the cinema has to give customers a reason not to wait. And this is why the strongest operators stopped trying to compete with the living room on convenience. They started competing on everything the living room cannot reproduce. This is why loyalty programs are more interesting than they first appear. They are not simply discounts for people who like movies. They change the cash flow relationship between the customer and the theater. AMC Stubs A-List currently ranges from roughly $20 to $30 per month, depending on the geographic coverage of the plan. With a separate lower-priced classic tier, Regal Unlimited starts at roughly $26 per month and allows members to watch as many eligible movies as they want. Cinemark uses a different model. Movie Club costs roughly $11 or $12 per month, depending on the market. Includes one regular movie credit each month. Removes online ticket fees and discounts concessions by 20%. These sound like customer perks. Look at them from the theater's side. A person who already pays monthly has another reason to return. Every return creates another opportunity to sell popcorn, drinks, premium formats, and companion tickets. More importantly, some customer revenue arrives on a recurring schedule rather than depending entirely on whether that person suddenly feels like seeing a movie this Friday. Cinemark reported more than 1.45 million Movie Club members in 2025, with the program connected to roughly 30% of domestic admissions revenue. That changes what a customer is worth. The most valuable visitor may not be the person buying the most expensive ticket tonight. It may be the person whose relationship with the theater continues next month and the month after that. And subscriptions are only one way to use the building differently. A television at home can be cheaper. It can be easier. It can pause when you want a snack. So trying to beat streaming on convenience is a losing fight. The better strategy is to make the cinema difficult to substitute. Better projection, better sound, reclining seats, food delivered to the auditorium, premium formats, private rentals, live sports, concert films, gaming events, opera, corporate presentations. Suddenly, the screen is not only a place where Hollywood movies appear, it is a large communal display inside a building that already has seating, sound, food, staff, and parking. The Taylor Swift concert film in 2023 became a striking example of alternative programming, generating more than $260 million globally. The lesson is bigger than one concert. A cinema does not have to rent all of its demand from Hollywood. Every hour an auditorium sits empty is inventory that expires forever. You cannot sell Tuesday afternoon's empty seats on Wednesday. The smarter cinema asks a different question. If this room already exists, what else can I sell inside it? Now let us actually do the Saturday math. Imagine an 8-screen cinema. Each auditorium holds 150 people, with 4 showings on every screen. That gives the building 4,800 available seats for the day. At 65% occupancy, 3,120 people walk through the doors. Now apply recent AMC United States averages. Admissions revenue per patron works out to about $12.90. That gives our model roughly $40,300 of ticket revenue. Film exhibition costs consume about 47% of admissions revenue. Apply that ratio and roughly $18,900 goes to film exhibition costs, leaving about $21,300 from admissions before the rest of the theater's costs. Now the concession stand goes to work. Food and beverage. Revenue comes to about $8.43 per patron. For our crowd, that is roughly $26,300. Food and beverage costs consume about 17% of that revenue, leaving roughly $21,800 before broader operating expenses. Notice what just happened. Tickets produced far more revenue, but after the direct costs attached to each category, Admissions and concessions are contributing almost the same amount. That is the popcorn business hiding inside the movie business. But we are still not at profit. The theater also earns money from ticket fees, advertising, rentals, loyalty programs, and other sources. Apply recent AMC United States averages to our imaginary crowd, and those categories add roughly another $8,600. Now allocate the broader operating structure, staff, utilities, rent, maintenance, management, insurance, the basic machinery required to keep a large cinema functioning. Using the same public company averages as a rough model, most of the contribution we just created disappears again. The simplified cushion becomes only a few $1,000s before depreciation, interest, taxes, and other costs. This is not the profit of a real cinema on a real Saturday. It is an illustration built from public company averages. But that is exactly why the result matters. More than 3,000 people can enter a building and spend more than $66,000 on tickets and food, and the final economic cushion can still become surprisingly thin once everybody gets paid. And now, replace Saturday with Tuesday. Do not reduce the rent by 80%. Do not remove insurance. Do not stop maintaining the building. Just remove the crowd. That is operating leverage working backwards. Saturday shows you the opportunity. Tuesday shows you the risk. So which version of this business would I actually want to own? I would think about 3 models. The first is the traditional high-volume multiplex. Many seats, many showings, heavy dependence on mainstream releases, with thin ticket economics supported by concessions. It can work, but it needs reliable traffic and disciplined fixed costs. The second is the premium cinema. Fewer seats, higher prices, better food, stronger service, and a more deliberate experience. At that point, you are moving toward hospitality. The movie is still the anchor, but the customer is paying for comfort and environment as much as access to the film. The third is the diversified venue. Movies remain important, but the operator also sells concerts, sports, gaming, private screenings, corporate events, and anything else that can turn an otherwise empty auditorium into revenue. Of the 3, this is the direction I find most interesting because it reduces dependence on one content pipeline. But diversification creates complexity. There is no free version of resilience. If I were investing, I would ask 4 questions. How dependent is the business on ticket revenue? What happens on Tuesday? How expensive is the building relative to realistic traffic? And how easily can the venue create demand without waiting for Hollywood to create it first? At the beginning, the cinema looked like a simple business. Put films on screens, sell tickets, keep the difference. Then the ticket split changed the picture, so it started looking like a popcorn business. Premium seating changed it again, so it started looking like hospitality. Subscriptions, concerts, gaming, private rentals, and alternative programming changed it again. And now the real asset becomes easier to see. A cinema owns a reason for people to gather. We live in a world where almost every form of entertainment is trying to remove friction. Watch from home, watch on your phone, watch whenever you want. Cinema asks customers to do the opposite. Leave the house, travel somewhere, sit in one place at one specific time with strangers. Economically, that sounds like a disadvantage. Yet people still choose to do it because the experience changes when it is shared. The screen is bigger. The sound is physical. Nobody pauses the film. Everybody laughs at the same moment. Everybody goes quiet at the same moment. So if you own a cinema, you are not really selling movies. The studio owns the movie. You are not really selling popcorn. Popcorn is one of the ways you monetize the visit. What you are really selling is the reason someone decides tonight is worth leaving the couch for. If you can keep creating that reason, the rest of the building has something to monetize. If you cannot, the projector, the recliners, and the popcorn machine become very expensive furniture. That is the economics of owning a cinema. If you want more breakdowns of businesses that make money very differently from the way they appear from the outside, subscribe. Because the most valuable product is often the one nobody realizes is being sold.